Well, hello and welcome to the session of ExecuNet Masterclass. I'm your host, as always, Tony Vlahos, and my guest this hour is the author of The 11 Laws of Likability and the Connector's Advantage, Michelle Letterman. Ever wonder why some people are so great at getting what they want? Well, today, Michelle is going to lead you through a model for getting what you want, how to ask for what you want with ease and increase the odds of getting a yes. Really important stuff. And part of our daily commitment here at ExecuNet to connect you with trusted advisors like Michelle, who can help you create the transformative results you want in your career, at work, and in your everyday life. So let's begin at the beginning with a few housekeeping things that will make your experience today all the more enjoyable and valuable. First, by now you should have received the PowerPoint deck for today's session. Many of you are nodding. Yes, I can tell. That's great. If you're sure you have not, fear not. You can get the slides in PDF straight from the screen in front of you. Just look under the handout section on your right. And if you have any trouble, of course, chat to us and my remarkable colleague Tom will help you out. Second, do not be shy. If you want to ask Michelle questions, and I certainly encourage you to do that, you can chat those in and I'll do my best to relay as many as possible to her before the end of the session. Lastly, very important, please complete your evaluation before you go. I know that Michelle values your feedback, and Tom and I do too. It really does help us serve you better. Well, I am thrilled to present the leader of today's session. Named one of Forbes' top 25 networking experts, Michelle Tillis Letterman is the author of a number of important books, including the two I mentioned, The 11 Laws of Likability. We also have Heroes Get Hired and Nail the Interview, Land the Job. And of course, her latest release is the Connector's Advantage. Michelle is the founder and CEO of Executive Essentials, which provides customized communications and leadership coaching and training programs. Her clients include JP Morgan, Deutsche Bank, Target, MetLife, Sony, Ernst & Young, Madison Square Garden. The list is endless, as they say. A regular in the media, she has appeared on or been quoted by CBS, NBC, Fox, NPR. This is like alphabet soup, Michelle. CNBC, the New York Times, Wall Street Journal, Working Mother, and the list goes on. Forbes, USA Today, I've left out a bunch. But with that, welcome back, Michelle, to the ExecuNet stage. They are all yours.
Thank you, Tony. I'm excited to be here. I hope everybody is energized up. They're probably sitting at their desks eating, which is okay because you don't have to talk to me, but you do have to talk with me. And you can use the chat functionality for that because I want this to be a conversation because this is all about how to get what you want. And so I need to know what you want. If I say to you right now, what do you want? Does something immediately come to mind? You can put it in the chat. I'm also going to have them pull up a poll. These are probably some of the most common things I hear. If you don't see, Tony, can you pull it? Oh, good. Tony's pulling that poll up for us. If you don't see what immediately came to your mind on this list, that instead of answering the poll, you can put what you want in the chat. When you do chat, please make sure that you drop down the menu and put to the entire audience so that we can all see and be part of that conversation. And just so I know that you guys can do that, just say hi to me in the chat so I know that that functionality is working and I can see it.
Oh, we
So
got a
Tony,
hi.
you got a hi? I'm not seeing any responses.
I'm seeing in the question box lots of highs.
Well,
Okay.
how do I see their responses?
I'm going to rely on our Thomas here to help us out with that.
Yeah, they're going in the question box. Do they have the chat functionality?
It's the same form on their on the right-hand side. So if you open up the questions, you should be able to see that there.
Yeah, I'm only able to see one line at a time. So, okay, so now I'm starting to see, I saw somebody said, find a new job. Has the webinar started yet? Yes, it has. A new job, lots of hellos. Hi, Bruce. So I have to scroll through. It's not, it's only giving me that one. So this might be a little bit more challenging to have that conversation, but hopefully it says we can only send messages and it gets cut off. I can't even see what they're saying. It says they can only send messages to the staff. Can we make it so that people can send messages to to me so I can see it in the chat. While they're doing that, I will keep going. And when they get that fixed, tell me what you want in the chat, and let's see how the poll turned out. Tony, do we have results on the poll?
Not yet, Thomas. The poll is open. Yes, so everyone start voting.
Don't you love technology?
It harshes my mellow, but it's a necessary thing. So we'll learn something, I'm sure.
Well, we can also talk about, and you guys can ask me some questions about how we can use technology to enable some of this results to happen. Um,
Okay, I've got some results for you, for all
oh,
of you. So Michelle, here we go. Drum roll, please. 77, close to 78% want a new job or promotion. We've got, yeah, a quarter are telling us, well, the math doesn't add up here. I guess people voted twice. I'm not sure. But roughly a quarter have said, I want to be happier and healthier. And close to 20% want to start or grow a business. Yay for you. And we've got folks who are looking for a mentor and for new clients, and they round out the equation. So that's what people want.
so what percentage put happier and healthier?
A quarter, 25%.
25%. Okay, so the majority on this line are thinking about the new job or the promotion. And
Mhm.
yes, I see participant must open full panel. Okay,
Yes,
so
and our
Daryl
friends
is
are
helping
helping
us.
us out with
Thank
our.
you, Daryl, to teach
Mhm.
us how to make this work. I still don't see anybody in the chat, but I will keep going and just believe that you're having a conversation with me. And Tony, if you see the answers, you can read to me as we have some of this conversation. Okay, here's the deal. Um, when we think about how to get what you want, all the things that you want, if you don't have an answer, you're not going to make it happen. If you don't know what you want, you can't get it. That's why that clear vision is so critical. That's step one. We need to have clarity on what we want, and that's two pieces: mindset and measurement. So if you think about whatever you answered, whether it's a new job, a mentor referral, the question first to ask is, do I really want it? And the truth is that we can think about everything that we do in these four categories: get to, want to, should do, and have to. And I will tell you that even the getting a new job, it feels like a should do sometimes, maybe not a get to or a want to. And if you don't really want to, then it's really hard to make it happen. So get tos are the things you're so excited about. Like you can't wait. You get to be on this webinar today. Like you're so excited. Want tos are the things that you have that internal intrinsic motivation for. They're not easy, whether it's running a marathon. That's the picture that you have in front of you. It could be applying for a certain license or certification or exam. It's something, writing a book, growing a business. You have that. It's not easy, but you really want to. And then we have the should do's and the have to's. Now, the get tos and the have tos, those are really easy to get done because get tos, you're so excited for it. Have tos, there is that the stick, right? There's a consequence if you don't. And so we have external motivation to make it happen. The want tos and the should do's are the ones that are a little bit more challenging to get what we want, to get it to happen. The should do's are what I always say are somebody else's want tos for you. They're not your want tos. It is oftentimes that you'll have a want to um, that's pretending to be a want to. It's really a should do. And if you watch your language, you'll start to pick up on if you really want to or if you should do. And what I would even say to you is if I tell you right now, if you say should, you shouldn't. So pick something else you really want, another result you're looking for, because if you say you should, you shouldn't. Um, and if you say, no, 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 but I want to, well, then that's great. You're able to reframe it. And I will even tell you, I had a really interesting conversation when I was doing a program. When we talked about the choice of language, if you think about your daily, chores, and you say, um, I have to go to the supermarket, or I should, clean this up, right? What if you were to say, I get to go to the supermarket? And not everybody does. Maybe not everybody has access to it, or maybe not everybody can afford it. And so even the way in which we shift our language can change the way in which we approach our work. So the first thing is to test what you want against your mindset of, do you really want it? And then you have the ability to make it happen. And only then. The next question becomes, how do I know? How do I know that I got that result? And so I'm going to try to scroll through. I see actually people trying to chat with me, and I love that, and I want to be in a conversation with you. So I see some things about negotiating for higher pay, new and better jobs, success and happiness. Yeah, it's Tony, I'm going to have to rely on you because I really can't see what they're typing. So if we get some good stuff, just jump in and share it with us.
I totally will.
Thank you. All right. So think about it. And you guys got the slides in advance. So usually I'll ask you in the chat to tell me what are possible measurements. How can we tell we're getting what we want? So if we think about some of these things, like a new job, well, I got it. I got the title. Well, that's really clear. It is or it isn't. If we think about some things, like I had somebody once say, I want to make a partner. Again, it could be really clear I achieved it or I didn't. That said, if we want to be moving towards our goal, then we might want to think about milestones and milestone measurements. So we can have measurements of time, right? So how often am I doing something? Am I doing it by a certain time? Or is there a milestone along the way? So for that partner, it was, well, how much new business have I brought in? Because that was a criteria partner. It was, how many champions do I have? It was, right, what are some of the criteria that puts you in the line for partnership? And have I met those milestones? So that was a way that they were measuring. Of course, dollars is a great measurement. We can have a target dollar, a target savings, a target cost reduction, a target change in dollars. So, obviously that dollar, or even number, right? So if we think about the number completed, or numbers can be a number of errors, or a reduction in the number of errors, or a volume of something. So these are all different ways to think about, how do I measure, right, to start or grow a business? Well, how do I measure starting a business? Did I LLC myself? Do I have one client? Is it growing a business? Well, by how much? How many clients am I looking for? When I started my business, I remember my first year in business, and I had a goal of a certain number of clients and a certain number of revenue, a certain dollar of revenue, and I wrote those things down. And I will tell you, writing something down increases the likelihood of accomplishing it by over 80%. So if you know what you want, you had something that came to mind, you typed it for me and I couldn't see it, I want you to write it just on like a sticky note. And I lost that sticky note for a long time in that first year of business. Then I came across it, and it was about 8 months into my business, and I looked at all those things that I wrote down. I was like, oh, I did that. Oh, I did that. Oh, I did that. And so it was that measurement, and to continue to add those measurements. All right. So we have mindset and we have measurement, and I don't spend a whole lot of time there because that's just getting your head in the game and getting that clarity. Because when I talk about the connector's advantage, and let me be clear on what that is, your results, whatever it is you're working on, whatever it is you type to me, whatever it is you enter in the poll, getting that result faster, easier, and better. And the only way you're going to do that is with help. Everything that you said you are working towards, people are going to make that difference. You want a new job? Well, 90% of executive level jobs come from networking, and 85% at any level. I mean, the numbers, when I started doing this work, I was saying things like 54% and 60% and 80% at the executive level, and it just keeps rising. So for I think 70% of you that said you're looking for a new job, you are going to get that through people, not through online. Through headhunters, that is people, that is a relationship, but it is building the relationship with that headhunter is when they're going to think of you first. So it is all who you know. And for the promotion side of that, because I don't know what that 70%, if we were talking about job or promotion, you are 70% more likely to get a promotion if you have an active mentor relationship. So I love that we had a bunch of people saying that they're looking for a mentor. And I welcome questions about that, and we can talk about that as we go as well. What about that building of the business? People would rather do business with people they like rather than somebody that has a better product, to be honest with you. And the relationship will even win over price. And if you think about it, and we'll see if we can get this chat or Q&A functionality to work. I want you to tell me if there's a store or company that you will never work with again, right? Like for me, it's a cell phone company. You don't have to name the name of the company. You can just put like the genre, like this clothing store, or for me, it's a cell phone company. I don't care how many minutes they're going to give me for free and what kind of phone they're going to give me. I will never give them my business again. And we all have that reaction. And I see somebody said banks, um, cable companies. That's a common one as well. Used car is one that I often hear. So you can relate to this. So understand that if you are starting to grow and build your own business, it is about the relationship and about the referrals. 92% of consumers trust referrals from people they know, and it increases their likelihood to buy by more than 4 times. And this is only getting worse because 28% of millennials report that they won't even try a product if their friends don't approve of it. So really, it is everything that you're going for is going to be impacted by people. And I'm not even going to tell you about the health and happiness one because this one blows me away. Um, the social isolation. This research comes out of Brigham Young University. There's a lot of studies around this right now around loneliness and social isolation. Social isolation has a greater impact to your mortality than obesity, and has an equivalent. Loneliness is equivalent on your health as if you smoked 15 cigarettes a day. So not only are connections going to help us with our results of the promotion, the sale, and the business, um, connections don't just feel good, they are good for us. And close work relationships actually predict happiness on the job and increase your employee satisfaction by 50%. And I know not all these stats are up here, but I'm using stats based on what you guys responded to. So I just want to prove to you with data that relationships make all the difference. But so here's where we are. We need people to help us with whatever result we're going for. We need their help. So there are only really 3 reasons people do anything. And this is when I'm going to ask you guys to come back to that chat or that Q&A and type in why people do anything. And you can think about it from your own perspective. Why would you do something? And Tony, I'll ask you to help me if you see what's coming in.
Yeah, I can start sharing those now. They get something out of it to help others. It benefits them. So there's a theme here, Michelle.
Yeah.
Receiving compensation, personal advantage, satisfaction, peace. I love that one. Fear. That's real. Let's see.
Peace. Oh, whoever said
Yeah,
peace and fear, I want to hear more.
yeah. Make yourself feel good.
Mm-hmm.
Obligation, reward, motivation, desire. Yep, I'm picking up a theme of personal benefit, but there are obviously some other very strong themes here.
Yeah, keep those responses coming in. You all, for the most part, have given reason number 1,
Mhm.
WIFM. What's in it for me? Whether it was the compensation, whether it was it feels good, whether it was the personal advantage, that personal development, a lot of even like altruism, I've gotten those responses. But if you think about where you donate your money and where you donate your time, you choose causes because they matter to you. You choose causes because you've been impacted them. You choose causes because they might impact your family. Right? So there is still an element of what's in it for me, even though it's because we're doing good. So I think a lot of those were in the WIFM. Are any coming in? So peace. Peace, again, there is something in it for me. I think we all could love a little peace and that feels good. Um, Fear, again, fear is a what's in it for me. I'm avoiding a bad consequence. So do we have anything that's coming on that list that you think is outside of the what's in it for me, Tony? Others you
Yes,
want to read off?
help another to succeed. I've read more than a couple like that.
I love that. That's reason number 2. I knew if we let them run, we would get it. So relationships, it's as my grandmother would say, I do it for you. Actually, what she really said was, what I do for you. Uh, we do it for the person. I once had somebody in the audience say, because it was my daughter, or it was my sibling, or it was my parent. We do it because of the relationship we have with that person. So absolutely. Any others?
Yeah, I love this one. And I think it's part of relationships. Sense of belonging. I think that's kind of different, but also aligned with that thought.
Yeah. So the third one I haven't heard yet, and you'll tell me if we missed it.
Well,
But the
this one is a little different, maybe. It fits our morals. I'm picking up a theme as well as, it's just the right thing to do.
mhm. And feeling right. Again, it's saying that I do something because there's something in it for me is not a negative thing. Internal intrinsic motivation, because it feels good, because it's the right thing, because it aligns with my morals, those are all great things. But it is about how I think about it. It's about me, and that's fine. Like there's no judgment there whatsoever. But it's understanding that that is probably the number one driver for people to do anything. And if we want to get what we want, we need people to help us get there. We need to influence them into action, and we need to understand why they would act. So they're acting because there's something in it for them. They're acting because of the relationship I have with them, and they're acting simply because you asked them to. And this is the one that people often forget. We forget that people just do things because you asked. There was
Mhm.
a great study done um, back in the 70s called the Xerox study. And it was called the Xerox study because it was literally at a Xerox machine. And there was a big line at the copier, and somebody would run to the front of the line and say, "Can I cut?" And the person's like, "No, there's a line. Social etiquette demands that you go to the back of the line." So, 90%, there was a couple nice people that said yes, but most of the time the answer was no. But when they asked with a reason, when they added the word because, it didn't so much matter what came after the because to completely flip the response rate. So they would run to the front of the room and they would say, "Can I cut in front of you? The FedEx guy is outside and I got to get this package shipped before 4 p.m." Yes, 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 of course. They let them cut. And when before the 90% were saying no, now 90% are saying yes. There's still a couple sticklers that are saying no, social etiquette, go to the back of the line. But they could also run to the front line and say, "Oh, can I get in front of you? My boss has been on me all day." Yes. "Can I get in front of you? I have to go to the bathroom. I need to do this first." "Can I get in front of you? The sky is blue." It didn't matter what the reason was. It was that they gave a reason. The 3 reasons people do anything. So we're going to spend the rest of our time talking about how to get better at these 3 reasons, how to understand how to leverage these 3 reasons to get people to act. And I will tell you, the best way to get somebody to do what you want is to figure out why they'd want to. So I'm going to say that again. Um, the best way to get what you want, and that's what this is about, is figure out why someone else wants you to have it. And the number one reason we said is the with it, right? The what's in it for them. So people are doing something because there's in it for me. What you need to do to get them to act is understand what's in it for them. Be curious. You need to balance your inquiry with your advocacy. So when we talk about inquiry, what we're talking about is asking questions. We're talking about seeking to understand what are their motivations, what are their fears, what are their dreams, what are their questions, what are their priorities, what is their decision-making criteria. Now, we don't want it to be an interrogation, but when we inquire, we can understand what drives somebody to act. So there was a fun little A/B test done on a blog. And it was the exact same article with 2 different titles. One title was "Avoid this horrible pain, this awful thing." And the other title was "Get this wonderful thing, get this fabulous gain." I don't remember the exact titles, but basically one was a negative frame and one was a positive frame. Get something good or avoid something bad. Tony, what do you think got more click-throughs?
People avoid the bad.
Of course. But what was fascinating was that the ratio was 19 to 1. It wasn't even close. 19 times to one click on the good. People were clicking on the bad, which means that people are motivated by avoiding pain. And it makes sense. Pain is real. I relate to pain. I've experienced pain. I acknowledge pain. I want to avoid it. I think that's possible. But people don't necessarily buy into the dream. Oh, that would be nice, but I don't think it's really going to happen. So we are going to focus our questions on understanding how, what's your pain point? What keeps you up at night? What are you afraid of? And when we do that, we can then advocate for what we want with that in mind, like to solve that problem, to relieve that fear, because it's all about them and the impact to them and not the impact to you. So inquiry is the key to influence. Advocacy is the key to results. When you advocate, this is when you are desiring to be understood. This is when you are telling. This is when you are putting out what you want and seeking to be understood. You need both. If I were trying to sell you something, hey, I want to go on a big vacation, buy this, I need money. Not going to fly. But if I say, hey, I want to sell you something, and this is like, I'm going to sell you this bottle of water. And this bottle of water to the marathon runner it's going to keep you from dehydrating and cramping and able you to finish that race. That's the benefit to you. To me, I sold some water and I got some money. If I'm selling that bottle of water to a new mom who has a baby, I would say, hey, you want to keep clean, purified water on hand at all times to mix with the formula so you don't have a crying baby. It's all about what's in it for them. So think about positioning your ask, think about positioning your advocacy based on how it resolves or benefits something for the other person. That is the number one way to get somebody to do something for you, bar none. And you all said that as you put it in the chat. Now, my favorite reason is because of the relationship. And I think this reason is increasing and increasing and increasing. When you think back in time to the agricultural age, the most important asset we have was our land. And in the industrial age, it was our machines. In the information age, it was the data technology. We are in the network age, and the most important asset you have out there are your relationships. And we already saw the statistics to show that. So what I want to talk to you about is how to connect like a connector. Because when you are connected, you get those results faster, easier, and better. People want to do things for you. When you ask for something, when you make an introduction, it carries weight. You have credibility, you have trust with and in from your network. So there's 7 mindsets that I talk about. Connectors are open and accepting. And when I talk about open and accepting, it's accepting of others. It's also accepting of ourselves. But that openness there's a phenomenon that happens. When you meet somebody, when you hear about somebody, maybe when you read my bio before you even joined the call, you decided some things about me quickly. You might not have even heard me say hello yet, and you've decided things about me. And the truth is, it's really hard to change those conclusions, because the truth is you will then look for more data to prove yourself right. And that's what we do. There's nothing wrong with this. This is natural. This is what an advanced species does. You take in data, you form conclusions, and you build upon that. To stay open is to stay open to being wrong of those conclusions, to stay in a place of curiosity versus conclusion, to slow your thinking down, to look for contrary information, to enable connection to form. Because sometimes that first impression isn't right. We already talked about connectors having a clear vision. You got to know what you want, and you got to be willing to ask for it, or you're not gonna get it. Abundant thinking. This is probably the most challenging of the mindsets. The opposite of abundance is scarcity. And scarcity, just like we said, fear drives people to act. Scarcity is people are acting out of fear. right? They believe it, they've seen it, they've experienced it. It's real. And so we make decisions out of fear. We're protective. We're almost defensive. And it makes sense. I come out of finance. What Tony didn't mention in my bio is that I'm a recovering CPA. I spent my first decade in finance. And when I started out in the early 90s, there were no female partners in the firm. There was one female senior manager, and she was not reaching back to lift any other women up because she didn't think there was any room for anyone else. And she was like, by gosh, it's going to be me. So you back off. And that's a scarce mindset. The abundant mindset isn't that everything's fabulous. It's the possibility that everything could be better. It's the possibility for something to be different down the road. It is not comparing yourself against other people. It's understanding the value you bring to the table. So abundant thinking is realizing there is enough. And not that we don't have jealousy, but we're able to manage it and reframe it. Connectors trust. Now, these mindsets enable each other. They're not linear, right? So, trust and abundant thinking and conscientiousness and generous spirit, they all kind of enable each other. There are 4 pillars of trust I often talk about. When you think about trust, you have to give it to get it. And authenticity, vulnerability, transparency, and consistency are 4 pillars that enable trust. But if you think about it on a daily basis, we have micro actions that are all contributing to either building trust or breaking it. And to become more aware of those micro moments, and are they working for you or against you? Social and curious, one of my favorites. But let me be clear, I don't mean social butterfly. I don't mean life of the party. I simply mean somebody who's willing to go out there and be open and be curious about learning and figuring out how we might connect, what our common interests or common values or common experiences or common people or common places might be. It's almost like that detective work of finding the puzzle of what do we have in common that connects us, and calling out those similarities rather than focusing on our differences. And when we find those connections, that's when we have, I'm doing it because of the relationship we have with you. I want to do it because it's you. Connectors are conscientious, and that just simply means that they do what they say they are going to do, and they follow up and they follow through. And to be a conscientious connector, you have to be really clear on what you're willing to say yes to. And remember, no is possible as well. My husband actually put a little sticky note with the word no on my monitor, and it stuck there for about a year before it fell off. And it made me recognize that when you say no to one thing, you're saying yes to something else. But there's a lot of ways to say yes and no. And in the book, I talk about yes and no shouldn't be one word responses. No, but is a great thing. I always say no, but I might give them a way to get a yes down the road. And then, of course, connectors have a generous spirit. And when you come at relationships, and that's what a connector does, they prioritize relationships and they focus on relationships in their approach to life and to people and to business. And when you come at that with a generous spirit, the connection becomes more rooted and more lasting and more influential. And that's what we're talking about right now. How do we influence others into action? And so by being a connector, by connecting with others, by building those relationships, by infusing these mindsets into our interactions, we enable that strength and that rooted connection that when you ask for something, people respond. But that's the reason number 3 is asking. And, so if you'll launch this last poll, is asking easy for you? Is asking hard for you? Or are you like me and you just kind of forget that you're allowed to ask? So I think the poll is open. Let some of those answers pop in.
Mm-hmm.
Do you find asking for help easy, hard, or just forget that's an option? Tony, you'll let us know when some answers are coming in.
I sure will. And so far, it's shaping up to be half of our listeners say it's hard, and it's evenly split between easy and forgotten.
Yeah, I get that. I love that there's a good percentage of people are saying that asking is easy. I don't remember. I would have to say, I just forget that I can ask. I remember one time my garage door decided to break and lock my car inside it. And I had to pick up my kids from school, and I had no ability to get to the school because my car was trapped in my garage. And I called the 24/7 hotline, and they said we can get there Saturday. It was Thursday. I'm like, yeah, but my kids need to be picked up in school in like an hour. And they came back on the line. They're like, we can get there tomorrow. I was like, yeah, that's still not going to get my kids picked up from school. So I'm panicked. I'm thinking I've been at the gym. I'm going to lift up this garage door. It would not budge. Could not do anything. Um, and so it occurred to me that I could call somebody for help. And I called my neighbor and I said, you know, I have a really big favor to ask. And she said, what? I'm like, can I borrow your car? And her response was a very fast and swift, sure. And I was like, whoa, 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 no, wait a minute. You don't understand. It's not just to pick up the kids. I have to be in the city tonight. I'm going to be driving your car over to Harrison, parking in the garage and going into the city, and I'll be back late. And she's like, not a problem. Which car do you want? Like, it was shocking to me um, that it was that easy. And so I share that because even though I'm always telling people you have to ask, if you don't ask, the answer is no. If you ask, you immediately increase your odds. And I tell people this all the time, and yet I forget to ask. And when I did, she just solved all my problems. And of course, my answer was, I want the Mini. She had a Cookie Monster Blue Mini, and I got to drive it. It was so fun. So asking gets results. And clarity, right? Clear vision. We have to ask the right way. What were you going to say, Tony?
Oh, I'm sorry, I was laughing at your mini comment because I had a Pepper White mini forever. Anyway, so a couple of qualifiers here, and I think we have a couple of lawyers in the crowd because the answer was, well, it depends, depends on what I'm asking for, or it's easy for people I know well. It's hard for me to ask anything of people I don't know very well. And others have commented that the older they've grown, they find the easier it's become to ask. Does that align with your experience as well, Michelle?
That's really interesting. And I don't know if it's age or the fact that that you have dug your well before you were thirsty, so to speak, right? So when we come at our relationships with this generous spirit of this mindset of generosity, um, it gives us permission to ask. It's like, you know what? I know I'm willing to give, and even though I might not have given to the person I'm asking something of, I know that's of my mindset, and I think that we do learn that with age. Um, so I do agree. It does depend on who and what you're asking for. And I see still up there the negotiating for higher pay. One of the things I will say around bonus time and salary time is get in front of the communication. So we're going to talk about some different types of asks in a moment, but I do want to address this because I think it's probably relevant for so many of the listeners out there. Um, and women, I will tell you, you have to do this because men are doing this a lot more than the women are. When it's bonus season and they're about to go in and they're going to decide what your bonus is, don't wait until they've already decided to tell them you're unhappy with the result because they can't do anything about it at that point. You need to be in front of the communications. You need to set that expectation. You need to say, here's what I expect and here's why. And what will happen is if you go in and say, I want $50,000 of a bonus, and they're thinking you were going to get 10, um, they're now going, oh, I'm really far from what they wanted. Now you're not going to get 50, but you might get 20 or 30 and get a little closer because they don't want you to be so unhappy that it was so different. But if you didn't say anything, they don't know. And they're like, okay, well, I'm just going to give her 10 and then she can be upset about it later. And so it does have an impact. Setting that expectation of I want to make manager in a year, or I want to work for this promotion. What do I need to do? You get them thinking towards the goal that you are seeking. So that's a piece of getting in front of your communications. And in a way, it's one of the asks that I'm going to talk about, the non-ask. So the non-ask is about setting a goal. It's about saying, here's what I'm working on, right? I want to make manager next year. I want to make partner. I want to get on this type of project. I want to make my book a bestseller, right? I want to blank. When you share that desire, that goal that you're working towards, what happens is people then want to be helpful. They want to be valuable. And they will say, well, have you thought of this? Have you tried this? Or maybe I can introduce you to that person. And the offer comes and you don't even have to make an ask. Now, if it doesn't, maybe they didn't think of anything, you can just seed it a little bit, put a little breadcrumb out there and say, I want to do this. Any ideas for me? Or any advice? Or what would you do if that was what you were working towards? Any kind of questions like that starts to get their brain and the synapses flying. And you've now kind of given them a problem to solve or a puzzle. And they're thinking like, oh, right? Oh, I should have advice. Let me think. What would my advice be? Or it could be anyone you think I should talk to or connect with. All of those things are great seeds to enable somebody to help you with whatever it is that your goal is without making a specific ask, because maybe you're not sure exactly what they can do or what they're willing to do. And that's what the Make It Easy ask is about. It's about giving somebody options. So it could be the alternative ask. Would you do this or that? And those things are of equal value to me. For example, I would say, would you post a recommendation on LinkedIn or on Amazon? I don't care which format you like better. I'm really happy, whatever you prefer. So that's giving alternatives that are of equal value. Now, when you make it a shrinking ask, the alternatives become lesser value. So, hey, can I take you out to lunch? No, if you're not free for lunch, maybe coffee. I get it, busy season. Would a quick phone call work? If this is not a good time, is there somebody else you might introduce me to? You see, every single ask gets a little smaller until there's one they might be able to say yes to. And another Make It Easy ask is the convenient. So especially when somebody is doing something for you, you want to make it really easy for them. So thinking about what timing is better for them, what location is better for them, how can we make it as easy for them as possible? My personal favorite is the opt-out ask. And the opt-out ask is simply giving them the reason to say no. Now, I know you're thinking, I don't want them to say no. But when we said reason number two, people do something is for the relationship, and we don't want to put the relationship at risk. So if we say the reason that they would say no, if you have the time, if your company allows it, if it's a good fit, if we give them the reason to say no and we make it okay, then they don't want to avoid you because they feel bad, and we don't put the relationship at risk. And a no now could be a yes down the road. So these are different ways to make the ask a little bit easier for you and for them. And of course, the with it ask we already dealt with, but asking for something with presenting the impact to them, the benefit to them, the reason for them is obviously going to be one of the most influential ways to ask. That said, don't pretend there's a benefit to them if there's not. Don't be the fresh out of college calling the CEO saying it would benefit you to have a conversation with me about this, right? Like, be realistic. And if you're seeking a mentor, be honest and let them know and personalize it of why you're asking them if you don't have that relationship already. So I'm just taking a sip of water, and I'll take a pause and ask Tony if any questions have come in that I missed, because I can't see anything that's coming in. I miss getting to have this conversation with all of you.
No additional questions, more amplification around the things that we've been talking about, Michelle. So I'd say let's keep going, and I'm sure more of those questions will pour in as we continue.
All right, well, this is probably a good time for, if you have questions on anything, to throw them out there, and we can use this time. What I would say in terms of building that relationship and is thinking about adding value. And that's something that I always like to do. So I throw this out to you as you're thinking about how do we add value to others? Because when you add value, the relationship starts to grow on itself, because there's that appreciation. And value could be a thank you, value could be recognition, appreciation, value could be an introduction, an invitation. Hey, did anybody out there tell anybody else about this webinar? Say, hey, you might be interested in this. That's an invitation. Whether or not you join the webinar, you can still make the invitation. So I put out in front of you a link to getting some of the things that I give away for free, some videos, some assessments, some chapters, lots of fun stuff. So I always want to add value. And if you want to connect with me, if the question didn't get answered, hopefully we'll have some questions coming in. But if the question didn't get answered during our time together, connect to me on LinkedIn.
Okay, and of course the questions are coming in now. So All right to them. All right, Michelle. A question has come about LinkedIn. Are you finding that technologies, Michelle, like LinkedIn, are inhibiting relationship building because those platforms emphasize volume of connections over quality of connections? Great question.
I think that is a fabulous question. Who asked that? Do you have a name?
It's a fellow named Daryl.
Hi, Daryl. I really do love that question. And I think it's all how we utilize and leverage the platforms. There are so many social media platforms out there. My suggestion to you is to pick 1 to 3 and to focus on them and not to spread yourself too thin. I personally am a huge fan of LinkedIn, and that is my platform of choice. Yes, I have a lot of connections on there, but my thinking about the channels of communication is to cross channels. So if you meet somebody in person, a great way to strengthen the connection is to also connect online. The more channels you connect over, the more rooted that connection becomes. So when you connect to somebody on LinkedIn, personalize the note. If you guys are going to reach out to me, please do put a note saying, hey, I was on your ExecuNet webinar. You will get a response from me. I don't accept 100% of the requests. I probably am in the 90s. If I can figure out why you might be connecting or what might be of interest, as long as you don't seem like a spammer, I'm probably going to accept. But then I'll send you a note. 95% of the time, I'm sending a note back, and then we start a conversation. I will tell you, there are people who I've never met in person. Sean, Darlene, these are people who engage with me online virtually. They've sent me messages. They have commented on posts. They have liked things. I've seen their name pop up again and again. They actually are referenced in my book, and yet I've never met them. The same thing happened on Twitter. Thinking about your social media platform based on who you want to connect with is really important because different audiences are in different places. And so B2B, it's LinkedIn. Global, Twitter. If you want a visual industry, you want to be on Pinterest and Instagram. If you are with an older demographic, Facebook is becoming an older demographic. So it really is about who you want to connect with. But I think you can change how you use a platform. And even though they might say, great, you have more than 500 connections on LinkedIn. Um, if you are willing to reach out to those connections, even if they're a loose connection, then it's worth connecting to them. And I will tell you right now, if you connect with me and somebody says, hey, I want to meet you, and I might not know you well, I will still reach out to you and say, this person connected to me. This is how I know them. This is how I don't know them. Would you be interested in a connection? So you're opening yourself up for those possibilities. And that's what being open and accepting is. It's the
Mhm.
mindset of a connector. Thank you. I love that question, Daryl.
All right, let's turn to another one. When you talk to people about setting goals, or I'll say it differently, in your words, of course, asking for what you want, do you find, Michelle, that many of us think about what's reasonable and realistic versus shooting for the moon? And what are some of the implications of setting your goals too low?
And can I have a name for this one?
This comes from Tina.
See, I had a feeling that was a question from a woman.
Mm,
There's so many things that are gender communication. And Tina, thank you so much for bringing this out because I want to even out the playing field. And what happens, and by the way, it's not only women, and there are tendencies of men do certain things and women do certain things more than the opposite, but it doesn't mean the opposite doesn't do it. So this is for everybody. When we get in our heads, we negotiate against ourselves. We are afraid of the response. And when we're afraid of the response, we either hesitate, we don't ask for what we want with conviction and with belief that we deserve it, or we ask for less than what we want. Don't negotiate against yourself. Trust me, people will negotiate with you. We will have to probably compromise on what we want. It's somewhere along the way, but you don't need to do it before you're in the conversation. So when you present, and think of it that way, when you present or when you share, maybe those words are less offensive, right, or less uncomfortable. Instead of saying, I'm going to ask for what I want, or I'm going to demand what I want, I'm going to share what I want. I'm going to share my goals. I'm going to let people know what I'm working on. So I think that you should understand why. why did you pick the number you want? Why did you pick the time frame you want? Why did you pick it? Like, get clear, because you want to be able to back it up. And when you can back it up, you don't need to negotiate against yourself. If you say, here's why I want $50,000 bonus, and this is the research I've done, and this is what I've accomplished this year, and this is why that's the right number. And
Mhm.
you know that you're going to be happy with 30, but ask for the 50, because if you ask for the 30, you're not going to get it. So you ask for more than what you want. And I'm not saying ask for a million, trillion, gazillion dollars. And yes, if anyone knows the Austin Powers movie, I have my pinky by my mouth. Um, but understand that you don't want to negotiate before you're negotiating. Thank you, Tina. That was a really powerful question.
Okay, here's a question that really reflects so many voices, but someone named Zenaida wrote in more recently, and I'll kind of riff on what was written. So you said earlier, Michelle, the best way to get what you want is to figure out why someone wants you to have it. Did I get that right?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So let's fast forward to a job interview. The person across from you, why do they want you to have something? How do you get inside the mind? This is Zenaida's question, to establish a good connection with that interviewer. What are some tips?
Oh, I love that scenario. Okay. So when we're thinking about the interview conversation, how to get what you want, which is the job, I will also say to you, part of what you're doing on an interview is deciding if you want it. But get the job first, then decide if you want it, right? Okay, I'm with you. Um, when you are in that conversation, it is their job to be asking you questions. But if you can make that interview a conversation, a back and forth, it'll feel very different. If you approach it with, this is somebody who I'm going to work with, I am presenting how we might work together, I am wanting to learn about this person. You can ask questions about, what's, the most important attribute of a candidate to be successful in this role, or what is the personality that succeeds in this company, or what do you love about your job? And when you start to personalize the conversation for learning, like you're trying to learn about it and to see fit, but what you're also doing is inquiry. When you're in the interview, think back to the WIFIT and the WIFM. We said inquiry versus advocacy. I know they're asking loads of questions of you, but if you have opportunities within that question to even ask a question before you answer it, like, so is what you're trying to understand this? Okay, right? So inquire and learn about what they are trying to learn about from you. Like, what's the most important thing? And then you can address that, because a lot of times interviewers, they might not be skilled interviewers. They're like, oh, I just saw the resume and I don't know what to ask and I need to come up with something next. And so that they're so busy thinking that they're not listening. But if you get them talking, it feels really good, and they're enjoying the uh, the talking about themselves and the sharing. And now it's conversational. Now I enjoyed it, and what you're doing is creating mood memory. And when you walk out of there, they will have felt good in the conversation with you, and that is something that they want. They want to work with somebody they want to be around.
Mm-hmm. All right, thank you. Here's a question from Rick. How do we passion test what we want, Michelle? And I'm going to interpret that to mean we have to be pretty in love with the thing we want. Is that true? And if it is, how do we know that?
That's an interesting question. So you're kind of going back to the get to, want to, have to, and should do
Yep.
areas. And I don't know if it has to be passion tested. I think it's a really interesting phrase, but I think it does have to be tested against the, do you really want it, or do you really get it, or is it really, I feel like I should? Is there something else? And I think you can. How do we passion test it? I think it is listening to our language. It's listening to our physical reaction when we are working on it. Like, are we feeling nauseous? Are we feeling anxious? Are we hesitant? Listen to your own reactions to some of the things that you're doing. And sometimes you don't know. You think when I started out, I did not want to be an entrepreneur at all. And now I just celebrated 15 years as an entrepreneur in business. So things change, and you have to test some things out. I just had a conversation with somebody who was thinking about starting her own business, and I listened to her and I said, it sounds like you are not really ready and you're not in the mindset and that you want to go get a job. I said, so go get a job. and do this on the side. I said, in that way you can test it out, because they were like, well, I'm going to do that for a few years and then I'm going to, launch. And I'm like, no, no, you don't need to launch. It doesn't need to be one day this and one day that. It can be, I'm doing this because this is what's, my job and paying my bills, and I'm testing that on the side. So as you call it passion testing, I was still in finance for the first, I don't know, 4 years of my transition out of finance. Because I started doing this work in 2001. I didn't incorporate until 2004, and I didn't leave a partial finance salary until 2005. So it was, you can test things by trying some things out on the side.
Mhm. All right, we're going to get one more in here. And this one comes from our friend Daryl, but I think Daryl speaks for many of us, right? Any unique advice for extreme introverts who don't dislike people, but just strongly dislike how some of these conversations begin? They're a little shallow. At times they feel a little salesy. We're a little schmoozing here. How do you work through that if you really don't feel comfortable?
I am so glad an introvert question came up. I actually, in both books, talk about the advantages of introverts. So I have the introvert's edge in the new book, and I had the good news for the introvert in the 11 laws of likability. Because what I want to say to those that feel more introverted is that you actually have an advantage when it comes to being a connector. You bring skills to the table and you're comfortable in situations that actually enable connection. You're better in the one-on-one, you're great listeners. And to be honest, introverts don't tend to be off-putting. They don't come on too strong or too loud and make people want to like back up, which I might have been known to do once or twice in my life. And I'm not saying all extroverts do, I'm just one of those that has. And so introverts understand your strengths and your skills in this arena, and find your format, do it your way. Don't think that it has to look a certain way. Um, I have a blog, and if you go to my website, there's stuff on networking, and there's a lot of blogs that I wrote, 5 ways to network like an introvert, so that it isn't looking that way. When you think about the opening question of a conversation, it doesn't have to be, what do you do? And please think of something other than, what do you do? I have a whole chapter on how to open up a conversation to enable connection. I'm so passionate about this topic. All I want to say to introverts is, some of the best connectors I know are introverts, and you have it. And it's just about doing it in a way that works for you, and also stretching yourself to get more comfortable in the ways that you don't love all the time, because we always want to stretch ourselves.
Absolutely. And please, everyone, click through on that link. There's so much great stuff there. And that is one of the areas that Michelle covers so well. So with that, we're going to start to wrap it up. Michelle, thank you so much for sharing your insight and making time for us today. Thank you all for tuning in. There were hundreds of you who just take that time, and I appreciate it, because that's the most precious asset I have, is your attention, and of course your marvelous questions. I learned so much just by getting to ask them. So Michelle, any final thoughts as we officially wrap up today's masterclass session?
Yes, what I always want to say to people is, to get what you want, you need to get clear on what that is, why people would want to help you, who can help you, and then ask for it, because you don't get what you don't ask for. So
And on
thank
that
you. I
note,
appreciate your attention as well, and I welcome you to connect with me.
awesome. Thank you again, Michelle. Thank you, everyone. I look forward to seeing you all at the next ExecuNet Masterclass. Bye for now.